Today we're going to be doing a multi-layer jelly print foam block print on top of a watercolor wash. So for our watercolor wash, I'm going to completely coat the paper with just plain clear water to begin with. Make sure this is a paper thick enough to handle the water and the watercolor you're putting on it. You'll know if you have enough on because if you tip it at an angle, you'll see where it's shiny and where it's not. You want to keep it nice and shiny, so when you're putting the water down the first time, you want to do it really fast. Then go ahead and grab some of your liquid watercolors, and you're just going to start kind of really stroking them into that water, splashing them around, blopping them on. You can do it in horizontal stripes, you can do it randomly around the page. Just make sure that when your colors are touching one another that they're friendly colors, they're not complementary or opposite colors. You'll end up with brown spots, and we don't want to do that today. We want this to be very colorful and light in our background because we're going to be layering additional bright colors on top, and we want to make sure that nothing gets lost in too dark of a murky black or brown background. Now, once you've done all of this, some of the other techniques that you can use when you're doing a wash is you can grab just some plain water on your brush and you can tap it on your knuckles and it'll splatter down into the paint, and you can see it pushes that paint around a little bit and adds some bubbles. We will also have some rubbing alcohol out today, and if you drizzle that rubbing alcohol on at just the right time, before the paint's dry but not when it's sopping wet, it'll push the pigment in the paint outward and leave these beautiful little dots and starbursts all over the place. Then we're going to put this on the drying rack and come back for the next part. When we're inking today, we're going to be using 4 inking plates at one time to make sure that we get coverage. This is a little tricky when working with inks because they'll want to move. You're going to need your brayers and your ink trays for this project. I'm going to grab a palette knife as well so that we can scoop the ink out onto our inking trays. Now, I like to work on these in color order. We're going to be using our primaries, so we're going to have some magenta pink, some yellows, and some blue cyans. I'm going to start with that pink. Remember these stains, so you'll want to wear an apron and push up your sleeves if you have long sleeves. I'm going to take out just a little bit. I don't need a whole bunch on here, but I do need enough to make sure I'm covering all 4 of the jelly plates. And I'm going to spread it just around a little bit. I don't have to do it very much because I'm going to put the knife back in there to keep it out of my way and clean. When I use my brayer, I'm going to start one direction and then work it the other direction. So I work it back and forth, kind of at all angles, because I want to cover the whole roller on the brayer. See, I missed a spot there. You don't want to miss spots. So when I'm doing this, I'm also doing it bicycle style. I'm rolling it up and off of the plate and then back down. After I have it completely covered, I'm going to go over and I'm going to transfer this ink onto my jelly plates. As you can see, they like to move a little bit. So you want to roll slow and gentle, but firm enough that it's going to have good coverage. If you miss any spots, pick up some more on your brayer, go back in and cover those spots up. You can tell if I left some water on, it didn't get it dried off before. It tends to run off the jelly plates a little bit. Now, I want to add some texture, so I can take one of my texture plates, push it firmly down on here, but I don't want it to wiggle around or come off. After I do that, I can pull it back up. It'll pull some of the paint off with it. I'll have to make sure I wash this off and I don't touch it in the meantime and get it on other things. And I want to continue to fill in some textures on my background using different types of texture plates. Same thing, push down evenly all over the place. It'll pick up some of the paint and leave that texture behind. Other options will be using a scraper, and the scrapers work really well if you initially get to that ink. Be careful your little pads don't pull apart. You want to shove them back together. But as it dries a little bit, it becomes harder to make those. You can pick up anything that has cotton or cloth on it, like these Q-tips, and that very easily pulls the ink up. Even if it's a little bit dry, it'll pop it right off the plate to give you some more natural looking textures and patterns in there. Another thing that you can use when you're working on this with the Q-tips is they will actually draw and lift off some of that ink that I'm on there. So I want to try and get some real natural organic textures in here. Now I'm going to take my wash that's dried, or mostly dried, and I'm going to put it on here flat so it covers all of them. Take a dry, clean brayer and gently roll that brayer over the whole surface area so that it picks up all of the ink that's underneath. You want to go both directions. Always start peeling off from a corner and there you'll see that it transferred to your background. It picked up most of the ink, but you want to make sure that you wipe off any extra with a microfiber cloth that's wet, not dripping, just damp. So if it gets too dirty, run it in the water in the sink and keep squeezing till it comes out clean, and then give it one more good squeeze as hard as you can to get all the water out, and come back over, rearrange those jelly plates if they move on you, and then you move to the next color. I use that pink magenta first, so now I'm going to use my yellow, and those places where it overlaps, it'll turn a little bit orange. Places that haven't been done yet, it'll pick up the yellow. Same idea. I want to spread out enough that it's going to cover my whole brayer and my whole surface over here when I'm painting with that yellow color. You'll notice when I'm going over it this time that the areas I didn't dry off very well are kind of refusing to have the yellow on it. I can leave it just like that because that's going to give me a natural texture. This time I want to leave some negative space. So I cut these little patterns out, these spirals from paper. You can cut any shape you want out from paper. You can even do paper strips that crisscross and zigzag. And then I'm just going to gently put them on here. I'm just sticking them down a little bit so they don't move when I do the transfer process. And I'm going to lay them out sort of where I want them to show up the most in my print. I'm going to add a few more. You can even take them off the edge, especially like this one broke. So I'm going to put it off the edge on those broken spots so that part doesn't show up and it looks more purposeful. Now that those are all arranged, I'm going to take my paper that I printed on last time. Oh, and if you want, you can add in more texture by taking a texture plate like this and pulling it back up off of here. It'll give a little bit more texture even in that background surface space that's on there. Let's see if I have another one over here that's more interesting. This one with the little dots is a lot of fun. So if I push down really firm all over and I pick it up, it kind of looks almost like honeycomb dot pattern back here. I think I'm going to do that one over here as well. As you can see, those white papers are getting dirty during this process. Pretty much it's a one and done. Once you use these, you throw them away when you're finished. So if you have a friend that's really interested in using them, not going to work out so hot. Go ahead and put your paper back down on there. Make sure it lines up before you push down. And then get that nice smooth push all over. Again, if you have a clean brayer, you can gently roll over it. Otherwise, just use your hands. Start by peeling up in a corner, and you can see over there where it overlapped. It left those negative spaces, and it started turning some things orange. Now I'm going to clean all of these off, and I can throw them away. If your friend's super excited about it, see how there's some leftover on here still? They can lay their paper down on top of here just like this, and the places that are still yellow will transfer to their paper. I don't need this anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean it off with that microfiber cloth. I'm going to repeat this process with the blue, and this time I use paper strips and a little bit of texture background, roll it around, and peel it off, and now you can see my finished project. From here, I'm going to let it dry, and then I have to figure out when I print my block print on top where exactly I want to do it based on all these textures. You can still see your watercolor wash through the background. Here's another example of where my friend could come in behind me after I took off those paper strips, and they could put down their paper if they wanted to. Now when you do this, it's called ghosting. It's a much lighter print that comes off of there, but that would make a nice purple tone on theirs if they wanted to keep it. Now we're going to move over to printing our block print. I want you to do a practice run first on this block print though. They are not easy peasy to print. So we're going to do a practice one first, which means you can pick any color ink that we have out today for your practice one, and any color construction paper that you're going to print on for the practice one. Now this ink is a little thicker, so I'm going to keep spreading it back and forth and all over until those little texture lines get smaller. I'm going to gently but firmly roll it over my plate because I want to ink just the parts of my plate that are sticking up. And by now, after watching our other section, you know that that should be the black Sharpie areas that I left standing up. All the other ones, we took our pencil and colored in that background to push them down. There'll be some natural textures that are in those when we're working on this process. Now, I know from last time when I tried this out already, I accidentally forgot to put my P backwards on my plate, so when I print it, as you're going to see, my P comes out backwards. You need to purposefully write it backwards on your foam plate if you want it to come out facing the correct direction on your paper plate. You're going to smooth this all around, gentle but firm. Again, if you have a clean brayer, you could go over this side with a clean brayer. I'm just using my fingers and my palms. And you'll know if it's all on there because if you pick it up and look at it sideways, it'll be tacky and it will stick to the paper. You always want to start by peeling off in a corner. You can also flip it over and rub the back side of that foam plate to make sure that it's stuck down. Don't rub so hard that you undo all of your indentations, but just enough to make sure the flat parts are on there. And when you peel it off, you'll have a nice sample of what it's going to look like when you print with the black on top of your other layer. Now we're using black to print on top of our jelly plates because we have so much color on there already. To add one more layer of color would make it very difficult to see. So we're going to be using our black ink just like all the other ones. Roll it out nice and neat. You're going to be able to see it a lot easier on your plate and where it's going to show up this time because it's a very well-defined shade in there. And you want to make sure you cover everything. So keep going back and picking up some more. Even when you think you've covered it all, pick up a little more and go over everything one more time at all those different angles to make sure you have actually indeed covered it all. And then we're going to take this and we're going to take our jelly print plate that should be dry, okay, at this point in time. And then you can do it one of two ways. I like to do it where I put the plate lined up on here because our plates for our black prints are a little bit bigger than our jelly plates turned out. So I'm going to line it up corner to corner on this side. That's my favorite part of the block print. I'm going to carefully smooth it all out, push it all down to make sure all of that black is touching. And of course, when you pull it off, you always want to pull from the corner. So when I pull from that corner, it'll reveal my block print on top of my jelly print. Put these on the drying rack and we'll frame them up next time.